I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Works. Wait up.
So there are no residents requests to address the board. And we will move into the beginning of the buildings and ground agenda. And before we start with KCBA and Fidavia update, Mr. Bremersky, our superintendent, is going to say a couple words.
Thank you, Mr. Maris. Good evening, everybody. So tonight, before we jump into the updates from KCBA team, Fidavia team, others, also from ELA, who are all here. So please feel free to come on up because we'll be doing a lot of this. Also, for the board, Dr. Brossman is here as well, in case there's any high school questions. But in the documents that you have available to you and stuff you're going to hear tonight, I wanted to kind of just start from an intro standpoint. As you know, we have finished the schematic design phase and moving in now to more of that really developmental piece of design, getting into the nitty-gritty pieces. Part of that process going from the schematic design to the stage we're in now was to try and get a ballpark estimate in terms of a potential cost. As you recall, maybe at the very beginning of this stage of the process, what we embarked in, there was the number that was kind of thrown out just on different options. That was based on just large schematic potential ideas. Now that we have, in a sense, a design, the Fidavia team took all the information, plugged it in, based on that transition from the schematic design to where we are now. So it's the second document that you will see in the attachment. But what you're going to find, and I don't want anyone to panic or stress at this point, but when looking at the numbers based on the initial thinking around $210 million, based on what's there, given current market, looking at current bids, current rates of things, ballpark estimate at this point is about $238, $239 million. That does not mean that's going to be the cost. What that means is it started at the very beginning. Information was plugged in, just kind of getting some measurements, looking at new numbers. And this is the first, in a sense, estimate of actual looking at things. The teams need to go back and refine the drawings, making sure that all the hallways and classroom sizes and space are the correct size, shape, and space, because if they're incorrect in the transition from one platform to another, it adds square footage, which adds to the dollar value. So that's what they're working on. So I wanted to preface that tonight because I don't want that to become the topic of conversation. I wanted it to be focused on the updates that are being provided, the information around some of the field, land development, information that needs to be done, and other conversation with the board. But know that more estimates will be brought to you as they're able to refine those documents. We just want to make sure that everyone who has the information is all seeing it and understanding it from the same perspective. So with that, hopefully bring people that dollar value, just kind of bring it down, take a pause on it. I'm going to turn it over, Ryan, am I starting with you? To Ryan.
And so to add to that, I think what Mr. Bremersky is saying is we're not here to debate these numbers right now. We're here to understand them and moving forward to refine them. Is that correct statement?
And I will say over time, as we continue into this next phase, which is more of the design, in a sense, the true essence of what's going to occur on the blueprints, we may not have to come back and say, we may not have to come back to say we have to scale things back. We may be able to come back and say, yep, all's good. But we may have to come back, depending on current numbers, current bids, things that are out there, current rates, to say we will have to look at things differently because this is going to, at this point, continue to exceed. We have several months of still working on that. But as we've said, we're going to be bringing you that information. This was the first go around at it. They've already, since we saw this yesterday, they've already been working through it and things are starting to already get adjusted. But we wanted you to have the information as a starting point so that there's no surprises in the future. So with that,
Good. Go ahead, guys.
Ryan, turn it over to you.
So pleasure to be here again in front of you. Here's the update for after our schematic design package, working with Fidavia, ELA, and Moore Engineering, all as a team to develop this package. So we have been busy. We've been having bi-weekly design committee meetings with district administration, various building administration, We've also been working again with our consultant team to make sure that we develop this project in the right path forward. As Mr. Bromersky mentioned, we are translating that initial design into the design development software that we utilize that will eventually become the construction documents. So it's actually what the building is built from. So in that translation, things tend to get a little big at first, and then we have to come back and scale them back. So we're certainly keeping an eye on that as we go through this process. We did have teacher and staff meetings with various departments. So some of those guidance and insight into what they want in their spaces. Again, we were following a program that was developed ahead of the schematic design. So those room sizes were dictated, and then it's kind of, hey, what would you like to see inside of your room? How would you use this room? What are the things that would enable a high quality learning environment within your room? So those were those initial meetings. We'll come back in the fall again to discuss that, show them what we were able to provide. Not everything was a yes. We're not saying yes to everything. There are some no's in that discussion as well. But those have happened in the spring and will happen again in the fall. We were also able to have an initial meeting with the township staff to review land development process, review the project, and you'll see in the schedule update how that will work in with submission of a master plan, and then eventually the land development submission for both the field projects as well as the building project itself. We also had an addition.
I'm sorry, do you sense if the township is on board and supportive, or do you sense that some resistance?
At this point, township is on board and has agreed to work with us through this process.
Okay, thank you.
So then we also had buildings and grounds. One more thing, sorry. Buildings and grounds members meeting to discuss some items, more specificity, irrigation, potential for solar on the roof, and the bigger piece there is pre-purchasing of electrical and mechanical equipment in order to phase this project properly. Right now, lead times for a lot of that equipment is up to a year out. So in order for this project to move efficiently and maintain on schedule, we'll be coming back to the board later on this year. So fall timeframe in order to discuss pre-purchasing some of the pieces of equipment ahead of the project going out to bid. And that's in order, once again, to maintain project schedule. Some of this electrical equipment, again, is a year out as soon as you order it. So we need to make sure that we maintain electrical and HVAC systems in Buchanan throughout construction.
I was actually talking to someone today, and they were working on a project, and they have a 2-year lead time on some of their electrical work. So it's definitely starting to stretch in terms of the length of time. So that conversation is going to be important coming back in terms of what we need to look at, potentially purchase in advance.
Absolutely. So want you to keep that in mind as we move forward here. Lastly, continuing to work on the athletics master plan in conjunction with the high school project. You know, some of these pieces are connected to one another, but others are also independent. So I want to make sure that you have the full picture here as we move through all of these projects. And then finally, obviously working with Fidavia through cost estimating for this point. And we'll continue to do that, as Mr. Bromersky said, through design development and construction documents.
So one question on this slide. Do we feel like we got sufficient input from the teacher and staff meetings that we're not behind on that and we can wait till the fall for further? We're in good shape there?
Yeah, the teachers were really pleased with what they were able to share, and they were very appreciative of being included in the process. So we're following KCBA's timeline. We got the initial input here at the end of April, and they'll get more input on, they're gonna take that information, revise it. They'll get to see some things in the fall and revise a little further.
Very good, thank you.
And how about the student council? Have you met with them at all?
Yes, I briefed them on the project, and they're very excited at the direction that this is headed.
Okay, and they have an opportunity to offer some input as well?
But they didn't meet with KCBA like teachers did.
Okay.
But the project has been shared with them, the goal, the aims, and they're supportive of the direction we're heading.
Thank you.
I will elaborate. There is one piece you'll see later on in the presentation that was a direct input from student council that was passed on through us, and we'll share that.
Okay, great, thank you.
So looking at the generic building schedule, we're right there on the second red bar, so we have a long way to go. We're in design development. So again, we have a long way to go just in design development, but also throughout the project schedule here. Just updating everyone, we've pushed back the design development submission until September, so that we can get a good set of documents to provide to Fidavia in order for them to price and come back with an additional cost estimate in the fall. So this is the longer approvals timeline. I won't bore you with talking over the slides. So if we go to the next one, just want to show you there's a lot that goes into this whole approval schedule. But the highlights really are, in July, we intend to submit to the township the master plan of all of the projects across the campus. And then also submit separately the baseball land development package, which will enable portions of the baseball field to move ahead quicker than the rest of the land development submission. In August, then we plan to submit the full land development package with any and all of the projects that would be bid with the high school project. And that also includes another, the NPDES, basically the stormwater package to be approved. And that's the longest lead time item. So we're trying to submit that as soon as we can in order to maintain our project schedule. And also, in addition with that, would be a traffic study conducted in the fall to study how our parking lots, how our in and out egress is happening across the campus. And then also, we're going to keep the building in mind. So we're going to ask for the township to have an initial code review with us to get their sense of how they see the building code working. It's a little bit of a give and take there. It's not cut and dry. So we'll start with those initial reviews at the end of the year.
So as far as any changes to the design that might save cost, going to your previous slide, that would be by the end of September, is that correct?
Oh, for this phase, we can still make changes through construction documents.
But it's a lot harder then, right?
A lot harder. Each step it gets harder. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So I look at your design development, so by the end of September, September 25th, if there's going to be some things to reduce costs, we'd have to determine them by then.
Absolutely. And we're
Okay.
going to be looking at those, as soon as we get out of here throughout the next couple of weeks to make sure that we're getting close to that originally established budget.
And I know we said we're not going to belabor costs, but just out of curiosity, what percent contingency is in the 238 million? That 10% contingency probably?
So there's
No, because of the size of the project and you get those huge economies of scale, we've actually scaled it back. There's 2% for construction, I believe 3% for market. So in raw contingency, it's 5%.
5%, okay. Just wanted to know where we're at. Thank you.
So looking at an overall construction plan, we're looking at 2 years of construction of the new addition. So once again, that would start summer of 2026, go through summer of 2028. Then we would renovate the major portion of Buchanan, the main academic wing, fitness center, and main gymnasium between summer of 2028 and 2029. In between those summers, in between those years, while school is still in session, we need to maintain the science labs and maintain their operation. So those science lab areas will be broken into 3 different areas in order to be renovated over a summer. So there's actually 3 nicely stacked sections of science labs. So we'll take each of those stacks and renovate them each in summer of 27, 28, and 29. So this is it in words. We also have it graphically as some other folks.
So timing along with contingency and cost, could we do better than that? Is that a conservative estimate? We might be able to do even better, or you think that's what it's going to be?
That's what it's going to be.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
Gotcha.
So the first phase here is again, building the addition. So that's in red, adjacent to Buchanan. And you can see that we're building over top of some of the existing steam line. We're also building over some of the existing electrical equipment for the PAC. So that's part of the pre-purchase equipment is we need to take those pieces offline in order to build the new addition. So when we take those offline, we obviously need the new equipment. So that's where we'll be coming back to you with those pre-purchase pieces here later in the fall. So again, this is summer of 27 through summer of 2028. And then in the summer of 2027, we'll renovate that first stack of science classrooms and the pack, the lighting, things of that nature in the pack. Then once the addition is complete, students will move into the addition. They'll vacate Buchanan, and that's when we'll renovate the balance of Buchanan. And also in that that third summer, so this is the summer, the addition's complete. Part of Buchanan is renovated of science labs. We're moving into the major renovation of Buchanan. The second set of science labs will also be under renovation at that point in time. And then the final summer, again, Buchanan is continuing to be renovated, and we renovate that last portion of science classrooms. Then we take down Franklin, demolish Franklin, and then finally finish up with the site work. So the reason for the timeline as it is it's moving pieces around, and there's, yep, the addition just takes the time that it will take.
I appreciate the slide by slide pictures. That helps us all understand it pretty easily.
Good, good. Any questions on phasing before we totally? Okay. So looking at the project south of Kaufman, this is an overview. The major pieces we'll discuss in conjunction with the high school project are the two red pieces there. So the new baseball field and the renovated softball field. The other pieces on the map that we'll dive into in more depth are the band practice lot and the field house. Those are the other major pieces to talk about. There are other pieces within the stadium, the press boxes, lighting upgrades, as well as the proposed maintenance building to the south of the middle school. We can jump to the zoomed in version. So after working with ELA and Fidavia, we've adjusted the footprint of the field house in order to actually reduce some square footage, as well as work with some existing setbacks along Muma Drive. So this is the updated field house, again, providing toilet rooms for the stadium, providing the double-sided toilet rooms between the stadium and the quad and any of the other fields on that side of Muma Drive, as well as the team rooms, trainer room, and then mechanical, electrical, plumbing spaces to support this field house. Any questions on the field house?
It doesn't, are they accessed by both sides? This is a totally different layout than the other ones.
So the southern half, the southern set of toilets is accessed from both sides.
But that looks like that's only the female side.
No, so the actual connection is just above where you see the two T's. Those are family toilet rooms. Oh, just down there. Yeah. So right there, I can make a right into the female or straight ahead into the.
I'm sorry, it's just hard
No,
to see.
no
on
problem.
here.
Yes, yeah. Good question. And then that would be the intention with the team rooms too. Right now, we're showing an access way towards the quad, towards Muma as well. So teams could theoretically utilize those without entering the stadium as well.
How much smaller is this than the last one?
It was around 4,000 square feet smaller
Smaller than the first.
than the previous, yes.
So what's 4,000 square feet less?
This overall footprint has reduced because we're working with constraints of the track and the setback from Muma Drive. There's about 12,000 before, I believe it's about.
The field house and toilet you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
yes.
And that's just because of when you did the site work that you found out you couldn't.
Right. So we were able to accommodate the program in a smaller footprint. Okay. Moving on to the baseball field, and we'll let Hugh jump in on this as well. But looking at incorporating dugouts, bleachers, bullpens, batting cage, new scoreboard, as well as reworking the parking along the north side there. Right now, this is planned for 2 phases. The first phase is constructing the infield, the second phase and reworking the turf that is already graded really to be a baseball field. So that's phase 1, and the district facilities team and maintenance team are eager to get started on the turf management portion of this already. So that could get started in January, we're estimating. And then that could be really blocked off, so folks aren't parking on it, it's not getting disturbed by others walking on it, playing on it. And then the balance of the baseball project would be bid with the high school project, and that again would start in June. So really, the 2 phases are January and June. The January phase allows the grass to grow, allows the infield to grow for a longer time. Then when we come back in June, that's when we're building dugouts, putting the concrete pad down for the bleachers, completing the fencing, building the bullpens and batting cages. So really what it then turns into looking like a baseball field, but the initial groundwork was already set up in January with all the seating and infield cut-ins. Any other?
Now, that's good to jump.
Hugh, do you just want to share with the full board though, just around why it has to be the 2 phases?
Okay,
Just to kind of refresh. everyone.
yes, when the threshold of an acre kicks in a NPDS, which is
Could you speak closer to the microphone?
erosion
Okay.
sediment control permitting process, which is 6 to 9 months. If you're under an acre, you don't have to go through that process. So what we did was determine what we can do under an acre, and essentially that's construct the infield. And the grass out there, talking to the prior contractor who worked on this, it was kind of graded with the thought of potentially a baseball field eventually coming here. So if we implement, starting this year into next year until the following fall, a enhancement program to build the grass stand, make it healthier, then it'll be ready for construction. And the goal is to disturb a minimal amount of the existing grandstand. Most of the work would be related to like the outfield fence and stuff. So we have to grade that area. So that is why we have 2 phases.
And that acre, that's a state requirement, right?
Yeah.
DP.
So what you have in board docs under, I think it's the last document, the project field summary. You will see the breakdown of phase 1, phase 2, work with the softball field, and then other things that can be explained. But you have kind of a simplified version of that information for your review.
And then conversely, the softball field, this is a little bit different situation, but similar configuration, built for softball, currently showing dugouts, bleachers, as well as bullpens. Right now, the plan is to maintain the existing batting cage up in the location that it's at, but rebuild, provide same drainage, similar facility as baseball in this location for softball. Moving up to the band parking lot off Kaufman and Muma, this would also serve as additional stadium parking. Looking at 253 spaces. There are a few additions to this image, including a sidewalk over to the stadium and a sidewalk connecting to the trail going around the softball area there. So some additional connection points to really make this this parking lot feasible and utilized for all the sporting areas there, as well as band practice in the future. So jumping into the building, this is existing Buchanan and Franklin. So once again, looking at creating that addition over top of the baseball field and converting them to the new site. So in an updated plan, we were looking to reduce the amount of parking in order to improve the amount of impervious surface that we're using. So looking to build a little less asphalt, and a little more green space, as well as provide areas for stormwater management. So you can see that the student parking lots, there's really kind of 3 of them. So you'll have the main student parking lot there in the center, some additional student parking lot with additional driveway area for drop off that will show you how that works in a second here. And then the existing Upper Buchanan lot really becomes the Block 1 senior option parking. So buses will be clear of that area, seniors will be, Block 1 option, seniors will be able to come in and park there and avoid some of that traffic. And then the other lot is the staff and visitor parking lot, as well as the parent drop-off. So if we go to the next slide. Just showing you once again how your existing circulation works for both arrival and dismissal. Buses come up along the western side of Buchanan, parent drop-off in multiple locations, so we're looking to improve that. So by improving that in the morning, when buses arrive, again, they'll travel in the same direction, leaving the middle school, coming up along Buchanan, dropping off. Parents will now have the opportunity to drop off at the front door between the staff visitor lot and the student parking lot, or also as a flexible option to the south with the new entry adjacent to the cafeteria. We'll provide a turnaround with a gate. That's the current plan. So folks can come in, drop off, turn around, and then exit back out onto Kaufman. And then at dismissal, things change a little bit. The buses turn around on the western side, and then to the southern side, that becomes bus pickup as well. So now parents won't be able to pick up there until the bus is clear, and the main pickup and then student dismissal will be from the north. We're still working out how those connections work. That will be part of the traffic study in the fall, exactly where in and out are, how many, but trying to provide the district as much flexibility in arrival and dismissal as possible.
So won't that back up the parents? If you have to wait till all the buses go, could that back it up to the Kaufman Road?
So that comment is only for that southern pickup. So they'll still be able to pick up and exit through the north freely. They just won't be able to enter that southern bus pickup zone until the buses are.
So you don't expect it to back up?
I can't promise that, but again, the traffic study will help us determine if there are other measures needed to alleviate traffic. Viewing floor plan of the building again, on the left-hand side in red, existing Buchanan wing, largely stays academics and physical education. Then moving west to east, we have the library learning commons in between the PAC and the existing main gymnasium, which becomes the auxiliary gymnasium and wrestling room. We then build a new main gymnasium for physical education, as well as technology and engineering center all the way to the east. Then in the center of the building, we have family consumer sciences on the first floor, which includes the sewing room and pre-K. And then we have kitchen and cafeteria right at the heart of the building, adjacent to the music and performing arts, which abuts the PAC, providing additional educational opportunities for those students. Moving up one floor, once again, core academics and existing Buchanan along with science. To the north, along the main entry, is the admin as well as nurse and counseling suites. And we have the balance of technology and engineering on this floor, along with arts and some additional core academics and CommTech. Moving up to the final floor, this really is the core academic floor, mostly core academics and some additional science labs in addition to the science labs that you already have. So once again, looking at some of the aerials, existing Buchanan and Franklin. As we click to the next slide, one thought of what this new school addition could look like. Again, we're taking a snapshot in time, so these are the schematic images. Once again, Franklin wing comes down. We build that new addition with the parking lot and the main entry. So once again, trying to provide that inviting entry, single point of entry. Everyone knows where to go to show up at the front door. As you enter, we've been taking some comments, again, improving how our design documents are going together. So you can see some additional structures been added since the last time. Again, so it's all part of the project, but how we're constructing this building is being updated daily. We're trying to incorporate some ideas of blue lamb timber, paying homage to the local history as well as commercial industry in the area. This is that one piece that speaking with student council was a piece of that they were desiring. They wanted to see this and they wanted to feel that school spirit. So incorporating the school store, which currently is adjacent to the cafeteria, which will be coming down. This provides a better area for them to provide those business opportunities as well as provide that school spirit throughout the student body.
Now, has there been, that's a neat idea. Has there been any thought about, at some point we talked about there being like a coffee station or something like that. Has been any thought to combining the retail operation, so to speak, so that for staffing purposes, you have like, you don't have to have one person selling sweatshirts and someone else selling lattes. It's all in one footprint.
Sure. Yeah, right now we are showing school store and a concessions right next to each other.
Okay.
But just,
When things would be available and we would be staffing it, these are mostly student-run things. So,
Yeah.
We've had different conversations, explore different ideas. Nothing being said.
No, and we don't need to set anything in stone right now. We just need to provide a space so that, to provide that flexibility later.
Yeah, I think we have that.
Yeah.
So showing the new main gymnasium, opportunities for athletic events as shown here, but certainly multi-station gym for physical education as well. This will have dividers that will come down that will divide the cross courts in order to have, again, multiple gym classes occurring in here at the same time. Again, we're starting to fit out some of these rooms based on the conversations we've had with teachers. So this is the proposed sewing room. You can see those built-in sewing counters, as well as flexible seating. So this room could be double used as another class if needed during that unblocked period. Looking at the learning commons outside of the library, but really the hub of activity between the PAC, the auxiliary gym, and the music suite. Place for student collaboration. Again, talking through the engineering lab and what that could look like. Certainly opportunities to spill out into the corridor for additional learning opportunities out there. Show the school really what that program is about and what's happening there.
Have we given any thought, and this may not be your wheelhouse, but Dr. Grossman, like learning comments? To me, that screams development. Has there been any thought to how we're going to do naming rights, if we're gonna do naming rights for some of these pieces, how that might look, and like have we involved Market Street or the foundation or any of that in any of these discussions?
At this point, no, but
No, we've started having some initial conversations, trying to dig into what might that look like in terms of donations. We do have a policy around naming rights, so those are things we have to look at and eventually bring back to the board for more conversation and discussion and decisions.
Yeah, like you said, I think there's a huge opportunity
Yeah.
there because there's a lot of people that are willing to put their name and donate to these things.
Yeah,
And
no,
that's a great
exactly.
way for us to get resources. I feel like schools and hospitals are two prime examples of what we can get. So I'm 100%, we need to actively go after the money.
Yeah, and that, I mean, so who is spearheading that? Is that Mrs. Burkholder, Dr. Grossman, like who will be spearheading that piece of it?
That's still to be determined. We're just having initial discussions and conversations around current contracts and policies that we have and figure out where we have to go or what do we have to adjust if that's a path the board wants to go down.
But I guess my point is, we
Who-
may want to accelerate those discussions because if we can get a lead donor, they would, part of cultivating that relationship would be seeking input and things like that, so.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, we're working through, again, currently looking at contracts, looking at policy, so we'll be back with that.
Yeah, and certainly we'd be able to support you in any, images
Perfect.
for fundraising that you would need as well.
Yeah, because some of these things, like, again, the learning commons, I mean, these could be high dollar, enduring
Absolutely.
ways for someone to make a commitment to the district while we're still receiving a lot of recognition.
Absolutely. a smaller program, but something we heard throughout, the teacher meetings were, interview rooms or podcast rooms or just small group rooms that you can record in. It's a growing curriculum piece as well as, a extracurricular piece. So, something that seems to be important to teacher and student body. So looking to incorporate a couple of those. Post TV studio, yep, that's fine. And cafeteria. So this is another example of as the design develops originally at the original schematic design discussion. Actually that upper ceiling, we were showing glulam structure, but talking with structural engineers and reevaluating. We have classrooms above that right now, and those pieces do not deal well with large loads above them other than roof loads. So again, as we develop the design, we're going to continue to look at all those pieces closely, and you'll see those repercussions throughout.
Hey, good evening. I just want to start by saying this is a normal process that we go through and a healthy process. You know, a conceptual design is put together. We estimate how much addition is needed. And then as it goes through the schematic design and the architect gets with your different program needs, everybody puts in their wants and needs. It tends to balloon. And we find ourselves in a place where we are now where, you know, it ballooned a little bit. The addition got bigger, quite a bit bigger, you know, to handle all of these current programs. So this snapshot that we took, and in addition to that, the engineers start surveying and crawling around Buchanan and find that some things are maybe in a little worse shape than we thought they were. So all of those things kind of bring us to where we're at now, which is in discussion to okay, what have we put in and added that maybe can't, because we have a budget to get back to. I don't know if I mean, I can, if you want to go through some of the line items, we have broken it out so you could see. So for an example, with the new addition work, I think originally we were thinking, we being Fidavia and KCBA, we were thinking about 300,000 square feet. What you just looked at from Ryan is actually 320. So I shaved that back knowing we're going to get to 315 at least. We have to shave that back somehow, some way. And then, you know, the other parts, a lot of this should be self-explanatory. I wanted you to be able to see the different components and where some of the money goes, like the removal of the Franklin building, separating the Buchanan costs, so you can kind of see that together. We did still put in, I believe you had a clean asbestos, like your HERO report was clean, but we know in the reality, we find some marker board, you know, behind marker boards and whatnot. So we left a little in for there. At this point, that's just a general site work allowance. Fidavia is working with ELA as these designs get finalized to put hard numbers to all of the site work items. The additional items, that bucket in improvement, again, we're at schematic, those details, they don't start hitting the drawings till later. So we just put a pot of money in for doing some mason repairs. We are working towards getting the Buchanan building, all of the underground scoped. We don't want to do a full renovation and find out that the sanitary lines are hanging off their last leg. So at this point, that's just an allowance until they're actually scoped and we can determine what needs lined, what can be reused, and what needs replaced. The quantity allowances, those are actually things that, and we would recommend at least $1 million there on a project of this size. That's actually money, unit prices and allowances that each of the contractors are going to put in their bid for unforeseen things. So they can't come with an open change order. Instead, it gets taken out of that pot of money. So that's what that is there. And the rest of these are, you know, we've been through these on the other jobs. Because of the size of this and the economies of scale, it didn't make sense to be at 5 or 8%, which is such an enormous number. But that market contingency, as the design develops and we get into CD, that should virtually go away. Like that's, right now, that's a little pot of money. I mean, relative to the whole project, that's $6 million. That'll help cover some other unforeseens as we go. And then we get into that construction contingency. That 4 million is just to cover change orders. Historically, looking through years of projects that Fidavia manages, most of our change order funds were 1.2 to 1.9. So I felt pretty comfortable, especially since so much of this is new building. New building typically gets less change orders because there's less unforeseens. You know, the surprises are going to be in Buchanan, not so much in the new addition part. And then the owner furnished items, well, the soft costs are, that's your architectural engineering fees, your construction management, building permits, that's your testing, commissioning, all your third-party testing, your builder's risk insurance. Those are all the construction related, but not direct construction costs. So that pot of money, and we are looking at that. We're thinking that we might be able to shave that down again because of the size of the job. We're getting those economies of scale. We might be able to shave that down, take 1% out of that. We're running numbers now. The owner furnished items, those are plugs at this point. The design team and the district have a lot of decisions to make in terms of like FF&E furniture. Those are decisions we have to make going forward. You know, how much are you going to reuse? Are you going to reuse some of the stuff from Franklin and bring it over to the brand new building? Or do you want all brand new furniture? That is not near enough to furnish the entire school with new furniture. But those are, it's just a kind of an average to keep us moving in the right direction. Same with the tech ed, like your shop equipment. You can spend a lot of money there. So we start with something and then we continue those conversations. How much of this stuff can we reuse and how much needs to be purchased? As with technology, you know, your projectors, your monitors, can a lot of that stuff get reused? We moved now I looked at the baseball and softball fields and the design that Hugh has, I think is a very conservative design. It's nice. Originally, we were carrying 4 million for that, which we then flipped that budget over to the stadium. Now we're bringing it back to the high school. But collectively as a team, we all felt that Hugh's design could be done for closer to the 3 million mark. So we just tightened that up a little bit. And as you see, we're in a little bit of a scary place right now.
So why did we move it from the stadium back to the school? Was it 211 million without the fields?
No, and that's partly why we had that conversation, because originally that 211 included the fields. So it seemed better to bring it back so we're apples to apples to where we started, at least for right now.
Was the 211, was that by you or KCBA or both? And do you have a before and after that can show these numbers that added up to 211 versus this?
No, a deep dive wasn't done like that.
Okay.
To answer your question, initially it was KCBA's, but I actually talked him down in some, if you remember, we went through the different hybrid options. We looked at some of those, and I have responsibility in bringing that down to that 211 based on the numbers that we've had. These additional costs are not just because of the bigger addition, the huge gym that we maybe didn't see coming, that fabulous, gigantic gym, that sort of thing. We have seen a significant increase in mechanical and electrical over the last 4 months. Those initial budgets were back in October. A lot has changed since then. I would say over the last 4 months, you know, we work with More Engineering a lot, and we have seen about a 15% spike in HVAC and electrical. And that's significant. On a project this size, that's significant.
How much would you say that is in millions of dollars?
I would say that's easily 10 of this.
What was that last answer, sir? I didn't.
That we've seen a spike in HVAC and electrical numbers over the last few months.
Do you attribute that? There's been a lot of uncertainty discussion around sort of the geopolitical tariff situation.
100%, yeah. So each of these jobs, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Since it increasingly appears that we're perhaps not going to see some of those impacts, is it reasonable to think understanding that no one is perfect at this, is it reasonable to think that we're going to see a resetting of costs back towards baseline?
100%.
Okay.
Yeah, we haven't seen it yet, but we haven't had a bid opening in a few weeks. But you know, because it was, so when we get bids in and they're higher than expected, like when you see this spike start and it takes you an estimate or two to catch up, I spoke with all the contractors and I heard the same thing over and over again. Copper, steel, aluminum processing has gone up 75%. That has something to do with, you know, our relationship with Canada at the moment. And, and no, like this is all I've done my whole life is construction numbers. And I believe that you're correct. Once that settles down, typically you see that
Okay.
spike come back
So
down.
this is sort of like a worst case document.
And all we can do is based on what we see now.
Okay.
This is what we see now. So that blip may very well get absorbed by the time this goes out to bid.
Okay.
And I'll keep you guys updated, you know, like, again, when we do this again in like August, September, we'll have a lot more construction details. We'll hopefully have reduced the size of the addition. We'll have a better handle on where these numbers are, all those sorts of things, and we can kind of tighten this up on our own. As well as some more information on like owner furnished items.
I'm just gonna jump in to state the obvious. All right, like the questions are good. The answers are like, I have not done this my whole life. I don't know the geopolitical spectrum that we're in, right? Like you know, let's be honest, we're 13% and change off from $211 million. That is a giant number in the business world. 2.3% off from what we originally talked about just a few months back, right? So the fact that there's only a 5% contingency on what we don't know is going to happen is baffling to me. It could be 385 by the end of this. We just, you know what I mean? Like, we don't know what wars we're going to get into. We don't know what wars we're not going to get into. We like to even talk about this is a waste of breath, to be quite honest with you fellas.
Well, that's
Right.
only, that is only a piece of it though. Like, you know, it takes a lot of components in that bucket to get to 13%, over 13% over where we were.
Not doubting that.
There's work we have to do. We have to figure out a way to reduce the size of that addition. And yet meet everybody's needs. You know, that addition went up, that went up 8% in size right there. It's a significant cost.
That was the point I was going to exactly make.
Yeah.
When I've looked at this and you look at what we're taking away with Franklin, the new addition, we're adding 111 square feet, 111,000 square feet, I apologize, which is almost 1/3 larger than what we had there. Now, I know our class sizes are small. I know there's some challenges, but I'm going to ask this question in a hypothetical way, but I think I know the answer to it. If we reduced programs and if we adjusted class sizes appropriately, do we need this much square footage? Because I feel like the square footage is our bread and butter. That's where it's gone up. That's where the opportunity is. And we need to find a way to reduce that. But I believe that's going to involve a lot of work from the administration and the district to adjust the things that need adjusted on our side so that we don't need all the space. And this is going to sound terrible, but to run classes with less than 10, 11 students, some that we're running with 5.
We see this a lot, and you're right. Maybe, you know, it may be, okay, maybe not quite as many commons areas and SGIs and LGIs. Maybe, you know, some people say, no, the gym is important. Others say, okay, maybe the gym doesn't have to be quite that big. I mean, yeah, those are conversations that have to be had because while some of these numbers are fluctuating based on the market, adding square footage is not, because the cost of construction just does not go down. And
Yeah, we might as well not focus our energy on things we can't change. And those are the things like the HVAC systems and the other things that are out of our control. But the things that we can change are how we utilize that space, making sure that our programming and our class sizes match what is needed for that space. And that we're not building extra space because we've got mismanaged class sizes and programming that would adjust that space significantly, and that we're not adding space that's going to sit idle. That ROI on that spend, we want good ROI on that spend because it is a high amount, to your point, Pat. But I don't want to focus on the things we can't change. I want to focus on the things we can. So.
the other thing, I mean, and again, we just got this estimate wrapped up. And so it's been a topic of conversation. We've had side meetings with KCBA daily. you know, is looking at Buchanan. And, you know, there's a lot of decisions that have to be made. Maybe we do an even lighter touch in some of those areas.
If I can just jump in real quick, Ryan, do you want to, because we
Yes.
had this conversation today. so-
Yeah, exactly. So part of the addition conversation is this is the balloon inflating, as we're saying. So right now we're showing, you know, one classroom for every teacher. So as you block schedule right now, you know, there are open blocks with classrooms. So part of that task is to go back and look where we can better manage that space usage, and, you know, certainly provide high quality educational environments, but use those high quality educational environments to the maximum of their
So
ability.
are we getting, I have a couple of thoughts on this. Are we getting more classrooms than what we currently have?
You are getting the,
More teaching spaces, I should say, because common areas, some of these common areas are teaching spaces.
they are, so yes,
So,
because
so right then and there, we're getting ballooning, right? And we've talked about having the spaces that are multi-use to get
Right.
and so I agree with Mr. Waldron, is we have got to, the ballooning happens, right? I know how it is. Everybody wants it, whatever. But I'm with everybody that we can't have ballooning, period.
Sure.
And we need to really look at these common spaces are also a lot of wasted space a lot of times. These big open ceilings, these big wide meeting areas, they look pretty, but a lot of times they can be wasted space. So I agree, like, if we were ballooning that much, we obviously initially thought we had enough space. So now we're ballooning.
Yeah, if we're building this around our current program offerings and around our current class sizes, that's where the ballooning's coming from.
So that's the conversation that we had today in terms of some of the next steps as KCBA will bring things back to us. We'll keep working, keep refining, keep looking at what is absolutely needed versus what's more of a want. And then focus on the needs and see where that brings as they continue to get the information back to Fidavia on the projecting of, you know, additional costs as we keep going through this process. So
yeah, and really the two pieces of scope, right, are how much you do in Buchanan and how much addition you build. Outside of that, like we're saying, a lot of this is out of our control. It's happened in this estimate so far and what we're seeing in the market today. But again, in those additional estimates through design development and construction documents, we're going to see where that's headed.
And there's also some opportunity to do phasing as well, I think. You know, is there certain wings that we just don't develop now? Or is there areas where we wait 2 or 3 years to, you know, renovate? You know, I think I think that we all agree we can't do this price. Because if the costs keep going up, it could be 10% by the end of the year.
Yeah, I think you're less looking at programs if they're viable programs and more looking at, okay, you have general academic spaces that are left blank for one block a day. Let's build less of those and provide those program spaces that you absolutely.
There really
need.
shouldn't be blocks that are empty,
Sure.
Couple
in
questions.
my opinion.
Couple questions. The mechanical and electrical, did we get multiple bids or just get one bid?
These are just estimates that our team
Okay.
did. Yeah.
So.
I mean, we
there's a
will
chance-
get.
Chance
we-
for opportunity to do better.
100%. And
So-
like I've said before, ideally, my estimate, like if we get 5 bidders, I want my estimate to be about where the third bidder in line was, right? I'm not trying to be
Understood.
the low bidder for you guys and then the bids and ultimately come in over, so.
My other point is, I want to make sure everyone understands. In my field, I'm a chemical engineer. We work more in industry, but a good estimate is considered plus or minus 10%. Isn't it true that the schematic phase is not a detailed design phase? There's a plus or minus to that, and we get to the detailed design phase, it could change, it could go up or down. But Mr. Wagner's comment about 13%, we're not narrowed down to a couple million here. We're schematic design, so there's
Right.
variability. And I think sometimes people get hung up on, hey, you're plus or minus 10% in industry is actually considered pretty good for the final project, what you estimate initially. Am I thinking correctly? Am I saying that right?
You are. Well, we use 5%. And actually, the company I was with for 18 years prior to coming to Fidavia, if I didn't stay within 5%, I wasn't going to keep my job.
Okay,
I mean-
so plus or minus 5% is a reasonable number for school. construction.
100%. And that's at this stage, that's kind of what that market contingency helps with. That is that little buffer. You know, we've lowered it to 3 here. Normally it's 5, but that's exactly what that kind of buffer is at this stage.
So 211 million plus or minus 5% is already up to 230 or down to, let's see what I'm thinking.
It would be like 5 million. No, you're right. Yeah.
Plus or minus 10 million, right?
Right, right.
So you can't fine tune this right now, schematic phase, and people get alarmed. And you just can't do that because it's preliminary. We get to the detailed design phase, the estimate's going to be closer, correct?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Maris?
Go ahead.
Thank you. I hope I have 2 points. First, in response to what you just said,
Okay.
I hope that you are correct. I hope that this is a short-term blip.
Well,
I hope, may I finish?
go
Thank
ahead,
you.
finish.
Okay. But whether or not 5% or 10% is normal in the industry or an acceptable variance, and you would know that far better than any of us, okay? The reality is we cannot afford any upward deviation. Whether it's acceptable or normal, we've looked at the budget projections. Our taxing authority is maxed out at $210 million. We have, and even then, we are looking at potentially significant program curtailment to hit budget in years 3 and 4. But if you recall, at the chart that Mrs. Hall so helpfully puts up, we have no residual taxing authority, even at $210 million. Now, will some of that work itself out? Maybe. But I sure as heck don't want to think about when we start adding 5%, 10% to the cost of this, what that's going to do to the cost of borrowing and then the concomitant impacts on the rest of the budget, given our limited taxing authority.
And I wasn't advocating, I'm just saying they're not as close as some people think that aren't in construction engineering. But what Mr. Garber and Mr. Walgamu said, we absolutely have to look at class size. We have to get that number down, whether it's plus or minus 5 or plus or minus 10. We got to get the number down, because if it's plus 5 and it's 238 like it is now, or it's more than plus 5, that's not acceptable. So we have to try to drive this down to meet what's the best for our students, but not over best. It's just like balancing the budget, with our budget. We have to come somewhere in between. So, and if we have too many class spaces and too much square footage that we don't need, we need to cut that back. So well, totally
Agree.
I'm not advocating say 238 is okay, but I just want people to understand, don't get scared. Some of this tariff stuff and mechanical equipment, I think we can do better.
Okay.
So-
Good. And then
Sorry.
my second point is more of an idea, understanding coming from the perspective of someone who's has only very limited understanding of these things. We have talked about this project in 3 broad tranches: Franklin Wing, Buchanan Wing, and New Addition. Franklin Wing goes away, Buchanan Wing gets renovated, obviously the New Addition gets built. Would there be a way, potentially, to keep part of the Franklin Wing? Not the whole thing, but could some of what currently slated to go into the New Addition or into the renovated Buchanan Wing, could we make use of part of the Franklin Wing? As I look at the difference between a renovation cost and a construction cost, it's $125 a square foot. Is that a feasible way to value engineer this while not taking away substantial amount from the size and scope of the project?
Sure. I think the programs that you'd be keeping in those areas are not adequately sized now for the program uses that they are. You're also, the candidates in that area would be the kitchen cafeteria, which would be right at your front door. So that's not a candidate to keep in that location. And then some of your tech ed and music spaces are not adequately sized today for their use. So those would be the pieces that would be kept, and they're just not adequately sized. Hence why we elected for those to be built into the New Addition.
And Grant, my gut feel there is it would cost you more to try to do something that, plus we're taking advantage of that space for the additional parking and the whole concept of the design. So it's not a bad idea, but I think the
Yeah.
reality is it would be harder and probably cost us more.
I was just gonna add that, like, I'm totally following you here.
Yeah.
Franklin is in a lot worse shape, so it would be a less spread. Franklin would need even more work than Buchanan. So it wouldn't be that big of a spread between trying to reuse that
Okay.
versus New Addition.
And the other piece I just wanted to share, if we just go back to the beginning. So recognizing the number and recognizing more work. So over the next 3 months, this is the work we'll be doing to make sure we go back.
Yes.
Looking at a lot of the increase had to do with, again, transferring system and files, but yet they're also still going back and confirming that there wasn't ballooning or expansion of size, scope, space of projects, programs, et cetera, and also looking at classrooms. So all of those pieces we've already discussed, and that is the next step. So we'll be bringing that to you at a future meeting to kind of look at revised numbers, revised estimates to kind of see where we go, recognizing that we know what that target number is and working to stay at that target number. So this is that start, and now it's the keep going, keep plugging away, and that's normal in this process. But we had to get through it, and there was the debate: do we bring this forward or do we not bring this forward? Wanted to bring this forward so that everyone's seeing just clearly, here it is, here's where we're starting, and the work will continue. And so we'll be keep bringing it back and keep bringing it back with the hope that it all does fit within the programming and the cost. But if it doesn't, we will have to engage in those conversations of what is it we are not going to do. But let's see if we have to get there. Hopefully we won't.
Does it make sense in parallel to pursue some of the ideas that Mr. Wolgemuth has been advocating about reducing class size? Can we do that quickly enough?
Not reducing class size, but basically not running classes with low numbers such as 5, 7, 9. And there were about 90 classes, and there were a handful in there, to be fair, that had 90 classes that had under 15 students in them, some of them as low as 5. Now, to be fair, there may have been a few of those that we needed to run with less, but the majority of those didn't need to be run with that low class size. Then we had some with a max of 30 in a high school, yet they had 17, 18, 19. And there was a large portion in that area. So you need more space and you need more classrooms that are going to be, frankly, larger than what we currently have in the Franklin wing, that are going to be used at about half capacity. And that's my concern, that there'll be classrooms that'll be sitting empty, or we'll have 5 to 10 students in classrooms that should hold 30 or 17. That's not good use of your building space. Hence, you build more classrooms, you need more space, and you have a lot more cost. From a board standpoint, I think it makes sense for us to give direction to say that we've given a number that we were comfortable with of 211. You got to work to get there, and you're going to have to work within that number. And that we know, I'm not disappointed that you brought this forward. I would have expected it, to be honest, having been through projects before like this in another district. But the one thing that I do trust Fidavia with, having worked with you in the past, you probably don't even remember me from way back in 07 to 11. But that they were able to keep those costs in line a lot better than most people would have expected. And I would expect the same for this project moving forward, that 211 is the mark we need to hit. The bloating that came with the square footage is our biggest opportunity. I'm not suggesting you make the class sizes smaller. I'm suggesting we utilize them more efficiently and maybe have less of them, because we've managed our programming and our class sizes in a much more efficient way. And I would also suggest that some of the common space is necessary. I would expect that some of the lighting's necessary. Those are all things that are important. I don't want you to cut all of that out, but I also think you need to look at areas like the learning commons. Those are areas that, it's kind of a nicety, but doesn't need to be that big. Might be an area you can get some square footage from and still have the same result, similar to what you did with the 14,000 square feet or whatever it was that we cut off 4,000 square feet at the stadium level. So there's some things that you can do there that I believe you can shrink the square footage and get us to a place where we have better use of that space. I don't think we need to go up 111,000 square feet from where the Franklin is to where we are today to have quality education occur there.
Yeah, I'll throw one or two more things in. This has already been considered, discussed, then forgive me, but I'm going to say it anyway. To that point, right? I mean, last time I checked, and nobody here has a crystal ball, right? That I know of. So you don't know what things are going to look like in terms of student population 30 or 35 or 45 years from now, right? When our grandkids are in school or our great, whatever it is, right? What I do know is that the last projection I saw, unless I'm misremembering this, student population isn't going up. It's going down, right? The other thing I think about too is Dr. Brossman, I mean, out of the 556 graduates that you had this year, roughly what percentage of them were in the school for an entire 7.5-hour day?
Percentage,
I mean, and if you don't have that number now, it's on the spot, right? But bottom line is, I mean, we all have neighbors, I know I do, where, I see the kid coming home at 10:15 in the morning because his day's done. You know what I mean? Like, and so that, to that point, do we need the square footage that we need if this is going to be how school is going to be run for the rest of our lives? I don't know the answer to that. Just throwing it out there as a consideration. So to Justin's point, do you need to add 111,000 square feet when kids aren't going to be in school, actually in the school building as much as they ever were, right? And the population of the student body is actually decreasing over the next 8 to 10 years. What that looks like in 2045, I don't know. No one does, but
Yeah,
those are the things I think about.
that's a great point, Pat. And I mean, the lifetime of this project is 75 years. So I guess I would look to the administration to look at some of those things. And we want to make sure we don't make a building much larger than we needed to. So 25, 30 years from now, a lot more of the kids are not in school in person. And now, we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know how it's going to change, but my guess is there's going to be less kids in school than there are now. And so we need to be very tight with what we come up with square footage and not put a lot of extra square footage. So 30 years from now, people are saying, why'd we make this big of a high school? We didn't need this much room.
So we often do see with projects of this size, new additions of this size, students start coming back. If they've left the district, or people move because there's now a nice new facility that's here. So keep that in mind as well. We don't want to underbuild this and then now all of a sudden.
Field of Dreams style.
Yes, exactly,
Okay.
exactly.
Yep.
It's true. It happens on a lot of our projects. Yeah.
Yep.
Mr. Bramercy, you want to comment on the future of education and where 30, 40, 50 years from now, what you think? Your crystal ball.
Let me get my crystal ball. Again, it's going to come back to what people want, what communities want, and on a larger scale, what we want for our kids and what that programming is going to look like. I do think because when you look at elementary and middle school students, they are going to be physically in school. Parents are not, unless the workforce changes where everyone's working remotely and they have the ability to supervise their children at the same time, schools are going to be needed. When you get to the secondary level, students need more experiences. And I would say, yes, I think students will probably be out of high schools more and being in more of the workforce and gaining more of those life skills. But you still are going to need educational spaces. And that's one of the exciting parts in some ways of looking at this from a project standpoint is really what's going to happen over the next 3 months. So we went from, hey, here's this idea. Now it's on paper and now we got to really work with it and kind of come up with what does this building need to look like. And so that's what's going to happen in the next 3 months. And then we'll bring that back to you. So
I did have one question financially. I agree with Mr. Wohlgemuth. We need to make the 211 million work. However, Mrs. Hall, what is our capital reserve? And is that all spoken for in all these other projects?
So it's about 55 million, give or take. We only have 3 years of the capital projects approved at this point. So I would say, yes, it's most likely going to be needed. So we're spending, I want to say 38, I'd have to go back and look, 38 million, I think, for the first 3 years. But things could fail. We could come up with other projects. We haven't talked about Centerville Elementary. There's a lot of other things that we have to deal with.
So the answer to the question I have is we can't use a little bit of that towards this project if it goes over 211.
Well, I mean, you can do whatever you want. It's just prioritizing what's going to be addressed there.
Okay, so we shouldn't count on that. I agree with Mr. Wohlgemuth. We threw out till 211 million. That needs to be the target or less.
Correct. And that's the goal. That's what we're working towards. So with that.
Well, real quick, just wanted to go through final next steps. So
Okay.
again, continue to work with everyone here to meet this goal. Continue the land development process. So submit the campus master plan in July, prepare those design development documents for September for then to David a cost estimate for in October. We'll be doing incremental updates along the way and as we develop some of these square footage updates. And then finally, looking at pre-purchasing equipment in the fall and also holding an additional town hall in the fall.
So that cost estimate will probably be more accurate than what we've. seen
Yes,
today.
yeah, they'll continue to hone in throughout the process here.
Yeah, and a lot of the what are now allowances will become more solid numbers as the design goes, you know.
So our goal is for that estimate to be under 211 or under. Is that correct? Or could that come in more and we'd have to cut again?
Well, it sounds like that's our goal, but I mean, that's a team effort.
Yeah,
Obviously,
gotcha.
a little bit of all these things.
Gotcha.
I would throw out to the board too, kind of, Mr. Maris, like to your last point, understand that some of those capital projects that we did budgets for that are approved are mechanical in nature. So we might see, we're expecting to see some budget strain,
Okay.
just adding that in. I know.
Or it could go better.
It could, but for the ones that are happening next summer,
No, I got you next summer now. But I'm saying down the road, 2 or 3. I'm trying to be the optimist.
You keep saying it's going down, it just went up, so I'm just saying.
Well, I'm talking about the predictions of it being higher because all this uncertainty in tariffs, some of that uncertainty may go away and it'll come down because of that, the prediction of what it's gonna cost.
I believe so. And I think where we see the push more is on 2 and 3 year long projects like this. Because once they sign that contract, they're stuck. They're trying to guess what costs are gonna be for things they don't want to buy now, but they have to buy in the final year. The capital projects are much shorter, you know, like the LPC mechanical, I mean, those are much shorter projects, less risk, so,
Understood.
yeah.
It's shorter time period, so you can nail in on the cost.
And even buy everything up front.
Yeah, and once again, we'll have a good number from Pennsbury High School in the fall, so that'll be a good judge against this project, and we'll have that months before this even hits the street, so we're looking forward to that bit.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
We're all good? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. The next item we have is the summer project update with Mrs. James.
Yes, yes. Good evening. So I just wanted to keep you updated on the summer projects that we're working on. The paving project and concrete project is moving along very well. The work that was being done at Mountville Elementary, which is the drive that runs behind the old Mountville Elementary, that work is just about completed. Maybe today it was even completed. They're moving on to the Centerville area, and that portion of the project is going to be completed in the next week or so. And tomorrow they'll start on the Landisville Middle School area of that project. We have not found anything significant that is concerning that was unexpected or anything. So things are moving well with that. As far as the fuel tank project, the old fuel tanks have been removed now. Everything is on order. Everything is still on schedule, they're telling me, as that project progresses. But they have done their first phase of that project in removing the old fuel tanks and so forth. We were able to get the fuel we were able to use all of the fuel possible in that tank. Obviously, there's always a little bit left in the bottom that you can't utilize, so that has to be removed. But there was nothing remaining in the tanks that was an unexpected amount or anything. So that project will resume again once all of the parts have been received and so forth. That project, as before, the estimated date of completion for that project is probably about the beginning of October. So in the interim here, we are getting fuel from we've had to go out and use fuel cards and things like that. So we are able to fill all of our tanks and so forth. The last project is the roof project. That will begin the beginning of July. They have a short.
Which project?
The roofing project. So the two for LPC and LMS. That project will begin the beginning of July. That will also go into part of the new school year. They have assured me that the worst of the noise and the worst of the vehicles being around and so forth will happen over the summer. And they have assured me that we won't even know they're up there. So,
They be done with all the gluing and the smells that are gonna associate with that?
yes, yes.
All right, any questions, Mrs. James? All right, that concludes our buildings and ground. Do we want to just go ahead right into finance? Go ahead, Mr. Walkman.
All right, we'll just move right ahead into finance. Our first item is item 4A, and that's contracts. Hopefully you all had a chance to look at these. So I'll just open it up for any questions or discussions. They will be on the July 8th agenda for approval. One of these contracts is new and the rest are renewals.
I do have a little additional info on the Toshiba contract too, whenever you're ready for that.
Sure. Well, let's see if anybody has any questions on the other one.
I
and
have
we'll
a-
Jump into that.
I have a question about the wrestling contract. That's considerably more than what we paid for originally. And the fact is, again, we have a wrestling room. Why are we continuing this? This is like $16,000 for the first year, 20,000 for the second year, which is what we paid, I think, for 3 years previously. Why do we need to continue this, Mr. Bowerski?
Sure. So we have two options. We continue as is so that we have facilities for our boys and girls wrestling team, as well as the community youth wrestling teams and groups that use our facility in the evenings. If we do not continue with this at this point, then the boys and girls wrestling teams will use the wrestling room, and we will not have the availability for the community groups to use the wrestling room at the end of the day. Otherwise, it'll be too late. So this is completely optional at this point. We've been back and forth with the wrestling club in terms of the contract. It is not what it was last time. It was $1, and then 20,000. But the cost incurred due to the use in the space over time, having to replace mats, et cetera, that's why the cost went up. We do have an out year to year that was worked into the contract. So it can go either way. We're just bringing it back because it was part of the budget. We have to do it.
I guess my question is, because we did it 3 years, but we were doing it before in the wrestling room.
So we didn't have we had the boys wrestling team and that was it. Now we have boys and girls.
That's true.
And we are seeing a significant uptick in our middle school and junior high wrestling teams. And that's actually something that's coming in the future in terms of having conversations, because we are seeing a lot of female wrestlers wanting to wrestle at the middle school, junior high level. So the space is going to be the commodity at this point. And so if we
No, continue. I have a question, ma'am.
like I said, there's two options. We continue as is so that all programming continues, or we move it all back to the district. But that you just need to know the community or the youth wrestling teams and groups that do use the facility in the evening will not be able to do that.
Right, and that's my point. I mean, essentially, if what I'm hearing is we're doing this so that we can accommodate the community wrestling teams, why don't the community wrestling teams simply enter into an agreement? And they, it sounds like we're subsidizing.
And we can do that.
My question is the existing,
Understanding that
Nope.
wrong.
my bigger question is the existing wrestling rooms that we have sufficient for both our boys and girls, or is it going to be tight and cramped and not good?
They would have practice at different times, and Mr. Landis and the team and the coaches would have to work on alternative schedules so that one team isn't always having to have a later practice. But it would be
It
alternating.
would be like we do for high school basketball. The girls come at one time, the boys come at one time. They don't
correct.
practice.
Yep.
I'm sorry, I guess I look, considering the needs and the things, that even though it's $60,000, again, that buys supplies for, you probably could buy grade level supplies, or at least for things with that. I'm just thinking, again, this is one of these things. Are you willing to make hard decisions?
Mr. Donald, I agree. I mean, I would love to, in a world of limitless resources, I would love to be able to do this. What I'm hearing is that this is the epitome of a nice to have, not a must have or a should have, because we can accommodate our district needs with our current facilities. And what we are in essence doing is spending a decent amount of money, and it's, I mean, $25,000 a year to subsidize community wrestling programs. I mean, the other thing that we could do is perhaps make space available in one of our other buildings for the community at one of the elementary schools or somewhere else. But yeah, Mr. Nato, I share your concern about this.
I have a little different take on this, and I have zero skin in the game with this, but when I look at this contract, I'm looking at this and it looks like it runs through 2029. This will all be resolved when we have the new high school in place. There will be no need for this contract at all. I think it's disingenuous to any program, forget about what we're talking about, to disrupt the youth in the community that are coming up through because we want to put the pressure on them financially to afford something that, let's be honest, they can't afford. So I would suggest that we weather this storm until we have the new high school and we have the space that we need. And I would be suggesting this no matter what we were talking about. I know we also do other things for clubs. We provide space for other individuals without any charge or cost for utilities or anything. So if we're going to continue to be fair, we need to be careful that we don't go down that rabbit hole of now having to address after hours clubs and other services that cost us with utilities, cost us with time, and that's going to become something that if we're going to look at this in that manner, then we need to look at a lot of other things under that same microscope.
I guess when do we have to have this signed by? Could we get more information? Because I mean, like, how is it going to impact the females wrestlers? Because I know we got a lot more interest in that. Could we get more information on how this impacted from the wrestling teams?
Yeah,
And
I agree
so
with
we
that.
can have-
I feel like
and-
I don't know enough information.
I don't know
to
enough
make an
information
educated
to
decision
implement-
here.
And maybe they would also be willing, maybe we can use only half the space. I don't know. I would love to have more information from everybody. Because I know we have a lot of female wrestlers coming up through.
I think if we were really concerned about this, we should have addressed this a long time ago prior to me being on the board, because this has been in place for a lot of years. And whether we like it or not, those of you that were on the board before me probably should have addressed this way back in the day when we needed that space and either built something or created some other arrangement.
Well,
Mr.
this has
Chairman,
only been
in
here for
fairness,
3 years.
Speaking for myself, I have raised questions about this contract every time that it's come before us.
And it was a 3-year contract. And before that, we didn't have any of this. So it hasn't been for.
Yep, we'll bring more information back.
So am I hearing we're tabling this one? It will not be on the July 8th?
That is correct.
Okay. And it looks like we have until, I'm not saying we have till November, because in fairness, you need to give these clubs a chance to figure out what to do. Some of them are going to be wrestling well before November, if that's correct, if I'm correct. So I don't think we can delay this decision indefinitely, in fairness to those the youth that are counting on space from us. So any other questions about the others? And then I'll turn it over to Mr. Graham to share a little bit about Toshiba. All right, hearing none, go ahead, Mr. Graham.
During the budget process this year, we obviously looked at a number of different things for savings. Printing and copying was one of them, but currently we are going into year 5 of a 5-year contract with Toshiba. Back in the beginning of May, they came to us with a financial opportunity that became available to them to essentially end our current lease early and start a new 5-year lease, replacing all of the copiers in the district. We looked at some different adjustments to some hardware, updating some things like swipe cards and software in the back end. Our printers are all in excellent shape, so we did not include them in there, but the bottom line with what Toshiba came back with was basically reducing our monthly lease by $3,000 or so, which ultimately would save us about $37,000 a year to renew that lease. The copiers would need to be replaced anyway at the end of next year. They just essentially brought this to us a year early. We have had nothing but good experiences with Toshiba, which I cannot say for other copier vendors we've worked with in the past. The hardware has held up remarkably well. Like I said, there's a couple of things we have to adjust here and there, but with the savings and getting a new fleet of copiers all installed by Toshiba that my staff doesn't have to deal with, it's sort of a no-brainer to us, and the reason we we're bringing this to you this year. So these would be savings that are not incorporated into the budget for next year that would just count towards future expenses.
Any questions for Mr. Graham? It honestly makes complete sense. Him and I talked briefly before this meeting, and in the outside world, I've had some dealings with some others, and we just actually went to Toshiba, and the savings we've incurred is much greater than this. So I have zero concerns with us moving this forward and signing this early. Obviously, it's a savings. All right, hearing no questions, we're going to move on to 5A, which is the approval of finance action items 5B and 5C. One is the Act 93 Administrator Compensation Plan, and the other is the CSIU, which is this, I think that's Susquehanna Valley IU, Central, something like that. Their computer service rates. So that's something I'm not very familiar with, but I'm assuming that's a pretty standard contract that we have to, or something we have to prove on an
Yeah.
annual basis.
It's basically just the updated way they calculate the cost. I can explain the formula if you want. It's a little convoluted there.
No,
but,
that's okay.
Yeah, just
We fine with
if
that.
you're curious, I don't have last year's rates, but since 2021, they have only gone up about 40 cents per student.
That's helpful.
So that's a little history for that.
So do we need to take these separately? Can we take them together? Take them together? All right, I'm just going to need a motion to approve action items B and C under finance action items number 5. Does anybody make a motion? Okay, Mr. Donato, a second? Second, Mr. Garber. All those in favor? Anybody online?
Mrs. Brady is raising her hand. Yes.
Okay. So I guess we're missing 2. So it's a 7-0. Thank you. All right, and we have another action item. It's a policy for first reading, and that is action item 6B. It's policy 815-1 on the artificial intelligence. We had some discussion about that at the last meeting, and so I'm looking for a motion to approve this as pushing it through as first reading.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Keener. Second? Thank you, Mr. Donato. All those in favor? Online?
Yes.
So that's 7-0 in favor. And last but not least, I need a motion to adjourn to executive session for a personnel item.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Maris. And a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor? Online?
Yes.
7-0. All right, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
You.